The door was already open. Not cracked. Not unlocked. Open. And there was blood on the marble floor. I should have turned around. I should have called the police. I should have done anything except step inside that penthouse with a bag of takeout food. I'd been paid $40 to deliver. But then I heard them. Two tiny voices. Crying. My heart slammed against my ribs as I pushed the door wider. The penthouse stretched out before me, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, artwork that probably cost more than my entire life, furniture so pristine it looked untouched by human hands. And in the center of all that cold luxury, a man, collapsed against a white leather sofa. His hand pressed against his side, fingers slick with crimson. His white dress shirt was torn open, revealing a canvas of black ink that climbed his chest and wrapped around his shoulder. Dragons, serpents, symbols I didn't recognize, but somehow understood meant danger. His eyes found mine. Dark. Burning. Furious. Get out. His voice was low, controlled, like he was giving me one chance. But those cries, those desperate, hiccuping wails, came from somewhere behind him. I couldn't move. I said, he breathed, pushing himself upright with a grunt of pain, get out. Blood dripped onto the pristine floor. My delivery bag slipped from my fingers. You're bleeding, I said, stupid, obvious, but my brain wasn't working. Observant. He took a step toward me. Then another. Each movement was deliberate, predatory, even as his jaw clenched against what had to be excruciating pain. He was tall. So tall that, when he stopped in front of me, I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. Up close, his face was almost unbearably beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, a cruel mouth, dark brows drawn together in barely contained rage. But it was his eyes that pinned me in place. Cold. Empty. The eyes of someone who had looked at death so many times, it no longer impressed him. Do you know where you are? He asked quietly. I shook my head. Do you know who I am? Another shake. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, disgust. Then you're either very brave, he murmured, leaning closer until I could smell sandalwood and copper, or very, very stupid. The crying grew louder. My eyes darted past his shoulder, and that's when I saw them. Two bassinets, side by side. Two tiny faces scrunched up in distress, little fists waving in the air. Bobby's, I whispered. Mine. The word hit me like a slap. His Bobby's. This bleeding, terrifying man had Bobby's. They need, I started. I know what they need. But he swayed. Just slightly. Just enough for me to see the cracks forming in his armor. You can't even stand, I said. I've survived worse. With 2 infants depending on you. His eyes narrowed to slits. Careful. I'm a delivery girl, not a threat. But you're about to pass out, and those Bobbies haven't stopped crying since I walked in. So either let me help, or what? I swallowed hard. Or I call an ambulance, and this whole building fills with people asking questions you clearly don't want to answer. Silence. The only sound was the Bobby's cries and the distant hum of the city below. He stared at me like he was calculating exactly how much trouble I was worth. Then slowly, so slowly, he stepped aside. The formula is in the kitchen, he said through gritted teeth. Don't touch anything else. I didn't wait for him to change his mind. My hands shook as I moved through the kitchen, all black granite and stainless steel, searching for bottles, formula, anything that looked baby-related. I could feel his eyes on me the entire time, tracking my movements, cataloging my face, memorizing me. By the time I returned to the living room with 2 prepared bottles, he had lowered himself back onto the sofa, his hand still pressed to his wound. The bleeding had slowed, but he was pale. Too pale. I need to clean that, I said. You need to feed them and leave. You need stitches. I've had worse. You keep saying that like it makes it okay. His jaw tightened. Why do you care? I didn't have an answer. I didn't know why I cared. I should have been running. I should have been calling the police. I should have been doing anything except kneeling beside one of those bassinets, lifting a warm, wriggling infant into my arms. The baby quieted almost instantly. Tiny dark eyes blinked up at me, the same shape as his. Her name is Suwa. I looked up. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The other one is Minjun. They're 3 months old. And their mother. The question slipped out before I could stop it. His face shuttered closed. Dead. One word. Final. Brutal. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be, he looked away. She made her choices. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. Instead, I focused on feeding Suwa, on the small comfort of her weight in my arms, on the way her tiny fingers curled around my thumb like she was holding on for safety. 20 minutes passed. Maybe 30. Both bobbies were fed, burped, and finally silent. I laid Minjun back in his bassinet and turned to face the man who still hadn't told me his name. He had removed his shirt entirely. The wound on his side was an angry red gash, still seeping blood. That needs stitches, I said again. I have a kit, bathroom cabinet. You want to stitch yourself up. I've done it before. That sentence shouldn't have made my stomach flip. But something about the casual brutality of it, the implication of all the times he'd patched himself back together alone, made my chest tighten. Let me do it. He raised an eyebrow. I was pre-med before I dropped out. I didn't explain why. He didn't ask. I know how to close a wound. Silence stretched between us. Then he nodded toward the hallway. Bathroom, second door on the left. The bathroom was bigger than my entire apartment. I found the medical kit easily, a professional-grade trauma pack that told me everything I needed to know about how often this man needed emergency care. When I returned, he had moved to a chair, his back straight, his expression carved from stone. I knelt in front of him. My hands were steady as I cleaned the wound, but my pulse was anything but. This close, I could see every detail of his tattoos, the intricate linework, the way the dragon's tail disappeared beneath his waistband, the scars that interrupted the ink in places. Old scars. New scars. A map of violence written across his skin. You're starring, he said. My cheeks burned. Sorry. Most people are too afraid to look. Most people probably aren't stitching you up. A ghost of a smile flickered across his lips. Just a flicker. Gone as quickly as it appeared. What's your name? He asked. Jayon. Jayon. He said it slowly, like he was testing the weight of it. Do you know what you've walked into tonight? I threaded the needle. I have a feeling you're going to tell me. No. His hand caught my wrist, not hard, but firm, unyielding. I'm going to give you a choice. You can walk out that door right now. Forget this address. Forget my face. Forget those bobbies. And you live your life like tonight never happened. My heart pounded. Or. His thumb brushed across my pulse point. Or you stay. You help me tonight. And you become someone who knows too much. I should have chosen the first option. I should have run. But I looked at those bassinets. I looked at this broken, bleeding man who was clearly too proud to ask for help and too dangerous to need it. And I made a choice. I'll stay. 3 hours later, the sun was beginning to rise. His wound was stitched, clean, bandaged. The bobbies were sleeping peacefully. And I was sitting on that pristine white sofa, drinking coffee from a cup that probably cost more than my monthly rent, wondering what the hell I had done. He sat across from me, a glass of whiskey in his hand despite the early hour. You should know who I am, he said finally, before you make any more choices you can't take back. Would it change anything? It should. I set down my coffee cup. Then tell me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, my name is Kang Di-ho. I run a business. Import, export, real estate, technology, all of it legitimate on paper. And off paper. His eyes met mine. Off paper, I am the head of the Kang organization. We control 60% of the underground operations in Seoul. Weapons, protection, information, things that would make you sick to know about. I had suspected. The penthouse, the wound, the casual familiarity with violence. But hearing it said aloud was different. The blood on the floor, I said carefully. Someone tried to kill you. Yes. Why? Because I'm good at what I do, and there are people who want to be better. The Bobby's mother. His grip tightened on the glass. Was a spy, he said flatly. Planted in my organization, in my bed. She fed information to my enemies for 2 years. When I found out, she ran. Took the Bobbies, tried to use them as leverage. My stomach turned. What happened to her? She made a trade, her life for theirs. His voice was steady, but something dark flickered in his eyes. I accepted. I didn't ask who pulled the trigger. I didn't want to know. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because you're still here. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, that predatory focus narrowed entirely on me. You saw my blood, you touched my children, you put your hands on my body and stitched me back together, and you didn't run. I should have. Yes. But I didn't. No, his head tilted slightly. Which means you're either remarkably brave, remarkably foolish, or something else entirely. What else is there? He stood. Slowly. Deliberately. He crossed the space between us until he was standing directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. Something dangerous, he murmured. Something that could get you killed. I should have been afraid. I was afraid. But there was something else, too. Something that sparked in my chest when he looked at me like that. Something that had been dead for so long, I barely recognized it. Want. I don't scare easily, I said. You should. Maybe. I rose to my feet, refusing to let him tower over me. But I'm still here. We stood there, inches apart, the air between us thick with tension and possibility. One of the Bobbies stirred. A soft coo, then silence. The spell didn't break. You can't be part of my world, he said quietly. It would destroy you. Then why haven't you made me leave? His hand rose. Slowly. His fingers brushed my jaw, a feather-light touch that sent electricity down my spine. Because I'm selfish, he admitted, and for the first time in years I want something I can't have. My breath caught. Then take it. His eyes darkened. If I do, there's no going back. You understand that? No going back to your normal life. No going back to delivering food and paying rent and pretending the darkness doesn't exist. You'll belong to this world. To me. The weight of his words pressed down on me. Everything I knew, everything I was, gone. But when I looked at those bassinets, at those 2 innocent lives caught in the crossfire of a war they never asked for, I realized something. Maybe my normal life wasn't worth protecting. Maybe it never had been. I already made my choice, I said, when I walked through that door. Something shifted in his expression. Not softness, men like him didn't do soft, but something close to wonder. Like he couldn't believe I was real. 3 months later, I stopped pretending I was a delivery girl. 3 months of sleepless nights with Suwa and Minjun. 3 months of learning the language of shadows and silence. 3 months of watching Di-ho rebuild his empire while nursing him back to health, of standing beside him in boardrooms and bunkers, of becoming someone I never thought I could be. I'm not innocent anymore. I've seen things, done things. But every night, when those Bobbies reach for me with their tiny hands, I know I made the right choice. And every night, when Di-ho returns home, blood on his knuckles, fire in his eyes, he finds me waiting. Not because I have to, Because I want to. You could still leave, he tells me sometimes, when the guilt catches up with him, when he remembers what he took from me. I would let you go. But I just shake my head. You're not getting rid of me that easily. His arms wrap around me. Possessive, protective, dangerous. Jayon, he murmurs against my hair. Diho, do you regret it, walking through that door? I think about the blood on the marble floor. The crying bobbies. The wounded man who looked at me like I was either a threat or a miracle. And I smile. The door was already open, I tell him. I just didn't know it was waiting for me. He pulls back to look at me. Those dark eyes, that used to be so cold now, hold something I never expected to see. Warmth. Not much, not for everyone. But enough. Enough for me, enough for Suwa and Minjun. Enough to keep the darkness at bay. Stay, he says. It's not a command anymore. It's a question. A prayer. Always, I whisper. And outside, the city of Seoul burns and breathes and lives on, indifferent to the empire we've built in the shadows. But up here, in this penthouse with blood-stained marble and expensive art, and two perfect children who don't know how dangerous their father is. Up here, it feels like home. The door was already open. Not cracked. Not unlocked. Open. And there was blood on the marble floor. I could have turned around. I could have called the police. I could have done anything except step inside that penthouse and fall in love with a monster. But I didn't. And now I'll never leave.